The winter sun spilled through the glass walls of the towering skyscraper, its golden light brushing against the cold steel edges that defined his empire. Inside the top-floor office, where silence was broken only by the ticking of an antique clock, sat Adrian Cole, an untouchable CEO, a man whose name carried weight in boardrooms around the world. He was known for his sharp decisions, his unbending principles, and the stone-like expression that rarely betrayed even a flicker of emotion. But that morning, something pierced through the fortress of his heart, something he never saw coming, a small, trembling voice from the one person who could melt the walls around him. "Daddy," whispered his 7-year-old daughter, her big eyes filled with hope. "Can she come to my birthday?" And with those words, everything inside him shifted. Friends, before we dive deeper into this emotional journey, I want to ask you something. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the beauty of hearts finding each other against all odds, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep telling these stories that touch souls, and remind us what truly matters. Adrian Cole wasn't used to being caught off guard. He could negotiate billion-dollar contracts, silence rivals with a single glance, and control entire industries with the stroke of his pen. But his daughter, Lila, was different. She had inherited her late mother's gentle spirit and her smile, the very smile Adrian thought he had buried with her when illness took her too soon. Lila's world was simple, full of crayons, fairy tales, and little acts of kindness. She didn't care about the limousines or private jets. What mattered to her were people. And the person she wanted at her birthday party was a little girl named Emma, a quiet child from her class who always wore the same faded dress and shoes with worn soles. Lila had noticed what others ignored. Emma didn't have the shiny lunchboxes or new dolls, but she had a warmth in her eyes that made Lila want to be her friend. They had shared crayons during art class, whispered secrets on the playground, and held hands when the world felt too loud. For Lila, inviting Emma wasn't just about a birthday. It was about sharing joy with someone who needed it most. But Adrian knew who Emma was. Or rather, who her mother was. Emma's mother, Claire, had once worked as a junior assistant in his company. A bright, hard-working woman who had dreams bigger than her circumstances. She had left under difficult conditions when Adrian's strict corporate world clashed with her compassion-driven choices. Whispers said she had stood up for something that cost her job. A confrontation that Adrian vaguely remembered. Something about charity funding being cut. Something he brushed off at the time. Now, years later, fate had drawn their lives together again, but in the most unexpected way. The thought of facing Claire again stirred something uncomfortable in him. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But Adrian wasn't ready to name it. He wanted to protect his daughter from disappointment, from inviting someone who might not belong in the glittering halls of the Cole estate. But how could he deny Lila, especially when she looked at him with eyes that reminded him of the love he had lost? Days passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines, but Adrian couldn't escape the small voice in his head, his daughter's plea replaying over and over. He tried to bury himself in work, but every time he caught Lila humming to herself while drawing birthday invitations, his heart ached. He finally asked his driver to take him by the school one afternoon, under the excuse of wanting to pick Lila up himself. That's when he saw Emma for the first time. She was standing near the school gates, clutching a threadbare backpack, waiting patiently while the other children ran into the arms of their parents. When Claire arrived, breathless and weary from what was clearly another long day of struggle, she knelt to hug her daughter tightly. Adrian sat in the car, watching a scene so tender it nearly undid him. There was love there, raw, unpolished, but real, the kind of love money could never buy. For the first time in years, Adrian felt the emptiness of his penthouse, the hollowness of dinners eaten in silence, the ache of success without warmth. The party was fast approaching. Lila decorated her room with balloons and streamers, insisting on pink, blue, and a little bit of glitter because Emma likes sparkles. Adrian found himself agreeing to things he once would have scoffed at, like hiring a magician instead of a famous performer, or serving cupcakes alongside the lavish catering. He realized he was doing it not just for Lila, but because he wanted to see Emma smile too. The night before the party, Lila placed an extra chair at the table and whispered, "This one's for Emma." Adrian felt something crack deep within his chest. When the day arrived, the mansion was buzzing with children's laughter, the garden filled with music and the scent of roses. Parents mingled, impressed by the grandeur, but Adrian's eyes were fixed on the gate. And then, they arrived. Claire, wearing a modest dress that spoke of careful saving, and Emma, clutching a small handmade card tied with string. For a moment, the world seemed to slow. Claire's eyes met Adrian's across the expanse of the garden, and memories rushed back, her voice in that boardroom, trembling but firm, telling him that compassion should never be sacrificed for profit. He had dismissed her then. Now, standing before him, she was not the timid assistant he remembered, but a mother radiating quiet strength. Emma's presence transformed everything. She giggled with Lila, marveled at the magician's tricks, and clapped her hands with unbridled joy. When the cake was brought out, her eyes widened as though she had never seen something so magical. Adrian watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling in ways he hadn't allowed in years. He noticed how Claire carefully stepped back, not wanting to intrude, her pride and humility balancing on a fine line. For the first time, Adrian wanted to reach across that line. As the evening drew on, something unexpected happened. Lila, with the innocent courage only a child could have, grabbed both Emma's hand and her father's, pulling them together as she announced to everyone, "This is my best friend, and this is my daddy. Now we're all friends, right?" The crowd chuckled, but Adrian felt the weight of those words. Looking at Claire, he realized this wasn't just about his daughter's birthday. It was about second chances, at kindness, at humanity, at maybe even love. Later, when the guests had gone and the mansion grew quiet, Adrian found himself standing with Claire in the garden. The air was cool, the sky painted with fading stars. He struggled to find words, but Claire spoke first, softly but firmly. She admitted life hadn't been easy after leaving the company, but she wouldn't have changed her choices. "Sometimes," she said, "when you lose everything you thought you needed, just to find what truly matters." Adrian for once didn't argue. He simply listened, and in that silence he realized how much he had missed, the laughter, the simplicity, the connections that gave life meaning. He thought of his daughter's plea, her insistence on inviting Emma, and he understood that she had given him a gift greater than any empire, the chance to open his heart again. The weeks that followed were different. Adrian found excuses to pick Lila up from school, sometimes sharing a conversation with Claire and Emma. He learned about their struggles, but also their resilience. He watched Emma blossom, her once worn smile now radiant in the company of friends. He saw how Claire's presence filled the spaces of his life that had long been hollow. Slowly he began to change, not in the headlines, not in the boardroom, but in the quiet ways that mattered most. And all of it began with a little girl's innocent question, "Daddy, can she come to my birthday?" If this story touched your heart, I ask you kindly, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us continue to create meaningful stories that remind us of the power of love, compassion, and second chances. Before we end, I'd love for you to comment below with one simple thing. Do you believe kindness can change a life? Your words might just inspire someone who needs to hear it today. As Adrian stood one evening watching his daughter play with Emma under the fading sunlight, Claire by his side, he realized that the empire he had built meant nothing compared to the family he was slowly gaining. For the first time in years, the mighty CEO felt truly rich, not in wealth, but in love. And in the laughter of two little girls chasing each other across the garden, he heard the echo of a promise, that sometimes the smallest voices hold the power to change the largest hearts.